Welcome to Behrend Talks. I'm Dr. Ralph Ford, Chancellor of Penn State Behrend. My guest today is one of our faculty members, Dr. Chuck Brown. Chuck, before we get started, let me just do a little background. You're Associate Director of the Black School of Business. You're an Associate Professor of Accounting, but you also have a very important role as something called the Faculty Athletics Rep here on campus. And you have a number of roles in the NCAA, and we'll talk about that later. But you won a really prestigious award this year, and that is known as the Milton Eisenhower Award for Distinguished Teaching. And just 2 Penn State faculty members received that this year. So congratulations and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ralph. I appreciate it. It was an honor to win that award, and again, a lot of people were up for it, so it was a pleasure to win that.
Well, we want to talk about teaching and some of your philosophy and the like, but, I'd like to just start out. I've known you for a while. We've worked closely together, and your role is the Faculty Athletics Rep for NCAA. But tell me a bit about your path to Behrend. How did Chuck Brown end up at Penn State Behrend?
Interesting story, Ralph. Actually, I interviewed with a number of schools back around 1999 when I was earning my PhD at Kent State University, and had multiple opportunities, one being Behrend, one being IUP, but we were trying to make sure that, trying to work out interview schedules. I ended up with an offer with IUP, and they gave me a couple of weeks to decide. And so I waited for calls from Behrend to come during that 2-week period, never heard. So I ended up accepting at IUP. And I think about 12 hours later, I ended up getting a call back from Penn State Behrend, and I honored my commitment with IUP. At that point, I just felt that it was important to honor that commitment with IUP. But John Maginaw, who was the director of the Black School at that time, I told him, I said, if the position comes open in another year, keep me in mind. And actually, that's what happened. After about 4 or 5 months, I saw that there was an advertisement for the position, and he and I ended up chatting, and I guess the rest is history. I started back in the year 2000.
Well, that what you did when you really wanted to come here and you got the job offer somewhere else and you took it and accepted it and stayed with it. That's the classy, right thing to do, and that's often the dilemma we have with our students, isn't it?
It is, and in fact, it's one of the things that I tell my students that, depending upon what your decision is, once you've made it, you have to stick to it. And I know we've had some students in the past who have struggled with, I got an offer and I think I'm going to accept it. Should I wait? And I said, I always tell our students, I said, when you decide and you make that offer, you really have to be all in and give it 100%. And things, they work out in the end based upon, how things are supposed to go. And I think if you're committed to the situation, I think, you have to stick to it. And I try to preach that to any student who, obviously asks for that advice.
I find generally it does work out. Sometimes they experience a little short-term discomfort, but longer-term they'll figure out their way. And they have to honor their commitment, and you expect no less from the employers than the reverse side.
Absolutely, and I think the key thing to remember here, and I always teach my students, is that you don't want to burn a bridge, especially early in your career. And I've always tried, at least personally, to make sure that I've not done that. I've worked at a couple of CPA firms in my career. I actually worked with the same CPA firm twice due to the fact that I wanted to do something different when I was in public practice. But after 2 years of working in one firm, I had a really good relationship with them and said, I really want to try this other opportunity. And I was up front and forward with them. And, they told me, they said, if you ever want to come back, just let us know and we'd love to have you back. And that's exactly what happened. After leaving that firm, I worked at a different firm for about 6 months and decided, I think I really want to go back to grad school. I contacted the previous firm and they said, yeah, absolutely. Why don't you come back, work for 2 or 3 years, save some money, and feel free to go to grad school. So, honoring those commitments and not burning bridges are critical to one's career going forward.
Well, I'm looking at what you did as a CPA. You worked with real estate developers, with steel industry, but this one is really interesting. Thoroughbred horse racing track. How did that happen?
That's interesting. I worked in a firm in Youngstown called HBK Inc., and one of our major clients was the Edward J. DeBartolo Corporation, and they owned hundreds of real estate properties, shopping malls, strip malls, office complexes, but they also dabbled in the entertainment industry. And so they ended up, they owned 3 horse tracks across the country. They also owned the Pittsburgh Penguins for a time, and as well as the San Francisco 49ers. And so I did not have the opportunity to work on the 49ers account, but I did have the opportunity to work on their thoroughbred horse racing tracks, Thistledown in Cleveland, as well as Oklahoma City has a track, as well as Shreveport, Louisiana. So I had an opportunity to go down there and audit horse tracks, and it's a fascinating industry. There's a tremendous amount of cash that changes hands, but I think understanding that business is really it's a tax revenue generator for a lot of different agencies in any state. And so really understanding how the tax collection works and how every dollar is bet, where does that dollar go? And it was just a tremendously interesting industry, and glad I had that experience.
I'll tell you, it is an interesting one, and I grew up not too far from the Saratoga thoroughbred horse racing track. I can't say I spent a lot of time there, but it is fascinating. It was just amazing to me, actually, just the ambiance, though, and the atmosphere that went with it. And they had one big race each year that was nationally televised, and it was a huge deal. And to your point, it brought in a lot of tax revenue for the state as well.
It certainly does, and it's really an experience. I think if you've never been to a horse track, just to experience it. It's like every race, there's a race about every half hour, but just to watch the people, watch the horses being paraded around, listening to the announcers who announce horse races are just fascinating. And it's just a great atmosphere, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of the clients that we had a lot of fun working on, and I will say that it's the first time that as an auditor, you always have to go in and count cash, and it was the first time that I've ever had to sit in a vault and counted over $1 million of cash. So that was actually pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a security guard there.
There were multiple security guards, and in fact, a good story, they always put the new auditors on that cash count, and the first thing that you do is you kind of go down. It almost looks like a speakeasy window, and you knock on the door, and the first thing you see is a big person security guard with the shotgun, and basically giving you the look, saying, "Why are you here?" And going through the process as a young auditor, that was eye-opening, but it was actually pretty exciting of being able to count that amount of money.
So let's switch now to your teaching career at Behrend. So you had some really interesting experiences before you started in the private sector. How has that influenced your teaching?
The thing about being in the industry that I was in as an auditor, you really got to deal with a lot of different people, whether it was people who had been a year or two into their career or seasoned veterans who are vice presidents of organizations. And, you quickly learn how to communicate and deal with people. I worked with about 20 different auditors within our group. And when you're out on these jobs, it's really, you get a fast education about how to deal with people, how to ask certain questions, how to be nice to those who maybe aren't too excited that the auditor is there. And so I think going through that process over the 4 or 5 years that I actually did that job, I was always being taught how to do things. I was always being shown how to do things, and then there was always this thing in the back of my mind after I might finish a task or whatever it might happen to be. It's like, maybe I would maybe approach that teaching environment a little bit different. How could I do that better? And so I've always been intrigued about trying to teach, try to make things better. How would I do it? And I think it probably goes back to my father. He was an English teacher for 30 plus years in the high school system, and I was just always intrigued by that. But the working in the public sector really it makes you grow up fast of how to deal with people.
It does, and you can bring that to the classroom. Now, right now, today's date, I will mark this for the record. It's May 12th, 2020. So we are really 2 months, into this COVID crisis, and it's unfolded like in a way we couldn't have imagined. And you were in the midst of it, teaching students. You had to make the transition to remote learning. Tell us, what was that experience like for you? What was it like for the students?
Fortunately for me, 8 or so years ago in the Black School of Business, we transitioned our MBA program into a hybrid program. And so I was transitioning one of my MBA courses into that. And I was really, really able to get a strong foundation and really adapted quickly to that online environment. And that was a testament to our online course development staff. They were instrumental in really helping me develop a quality course and understanding what really needs to be involved in providing that quality course. And so with my background of developing a hybrid course, it just made this COVID transition for me probably a lot easier than most. And I think that also helped the students. And a few things that I really tried to make sure in this transition was tremendous class preparation, communication, direction, planning, expectations. I think those are the things that, if you need to ease the students' angst about what's going to come, because again, really none of us really knew. And so it's like you do the best you can to keep those students informed, communicate that with them. And I did almost on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. And, the feedback that I ended up getting at the end of the semester, I've got a number of students that gave me, some really great feedback and just said that they appreciated the course. They appreciated just the commitment to the course and keeping them informed during the COVID crisis. And so I think it went pretty well. It didn't go without our hiccups, but I think in the grand scheme of things, the transition was pretty good for us.
Well, that's good to hear. The Milton Eisenhower Award for Distinguished Teaching. For those who don't know, that's a Penn State-wide award. Milton Eisenhower was our president back in the 1950s, and he was actually the brother of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. A little bit of trivia there. That's not an easy award to get. Let's talk about your teaching philosophy. And you talk about how you motivate students to learn. How do you do that?
Again, I think it's I continue to harp on communication. I'm as an accountant, I think we're all kind of wired about, we like structure, we like expectations, we like accountability. And some of the things that I've really done in just my teaching is I felt that the courses that I went to in college were the ones that the professor gave me something and really made me want to be there. And I thought, okay, what are those things? And really for me, it boiled down to, being a communicator, set your expectations, being accountable. I learn all of the students' names. I make sure that I know the names so they're accountable to me so I can call on them on a first name basis. I think it's important to, I try to provide a lot of energy in the classroom, almost to the point of, that it builds up participation. I try to sometimes treat it as almost a game show where we try to, do something to provide the energy in the classroom to make them want to come. And if you can do that, then they're going to learn. They're going to learn something. They may not even know it because they're enjoying their time in the classroom. So, being personable and I think showing that you care. I think that some of these soft skills, it's really about, presenting yourself and some of these soft skills that, makes the students say, you know what, this is a pretty neat class. I don't know if I really like the subject matter, and a lot of them do, and some of them don't, and that's okay. But if you can get them there, then hopefully you can teach them something. So that's, for me, it's the motivation of wanting them to get them to class.
Well, you make me smile a little bit. Soft skills as an accountant, just, we'll stop there for a second. So what are the biggest misconceptions that students, they come in, they want to be an accountant. What is it that what's the biggest thing they don't understand?
I think they don't understand that, again, I think they look at an accountant, somebody who's very stereotypical, green-eyed shade, behind working with one light bulb and a pencil and typing into a calculator, and the movies and those types of things back in history. They don't maybe really put us in a maybe a good light, but I think it's also what I try to do is say, look, one of my phrases, and the students probably get tired of me saying it, is, if you're not having fun doing this, what can you have fun at? And I say that kind of in jest, but it's the energy that you put forth in what you're doing. And I think if you show passion in what you're doing, that's great for everybody. So, accountants were not maybe all drab people and, always double checking things. It's about, putting the passion into what you like to do. So that's what I try to do.
One of the things that I've come to realize is, in working in different organizations, accountants, people with an accounting and a finance background, and those two are related, and I know there are differences, but many accountants they go on to become, the chief financial officer in a corporation or a finance officer, and that's a hugely influential role. In fact, you can sometimes argue they're running the company more than the CEO. Well, they have to understand the business model. I mean, like a really good accountant who understands the business model, it's hugely invaluable.
Sure. And I think what I've always tried to tell our students, it's not necessarily, you might not want to be an accountant, but if you want to be a finance major or an IBE major, another major, every organization uses financial statements, uses financial information, and you better know how to understand it, whether you want to be quote unquote an accountant or not. So, I always, some of the examples I would provide is, you as maybe, somebody who is, selling products and creating products. Well, you better know how much something costs so you know how to price it, so you know that you're going to be profitable. Well, how do I do that? Well, maybe I need to learn a little bit more about cost accounting or some other course. So, in business, everybody deals with accounting information. And so the more you can understand it, the better off you're going to be and the better decisions you're going to make. So it's not just about being an accountant, but it's understanding that accounting information.
No, absolutely. It's that larger context that will set somebody apart. Now, I'm going to switch. You are a huge sports fan, and I know baseball is your game. But you also serve in this role called Faculty Athletics Representative here at Behrend. Tell us, what is that? What's that mean?
The Faculty Athletics Representative it's a requirement that all NCAA institutions, whether it's Division I, II, or III, have this individual who really acts like a liaison between the administration, the faculty, the coaching, the athletic staff, and the student athletes. And so we all sit in the middle and act as a liaison for our student athletes. And it's really someone who is an advocate for the student athletes, helps them understand policies and procedures from an academic perspective at the institution. And we're really looking at making sure that we're looking after the student athlete well-being. And so I'm involved in a number of different things when it comes to the academic and compliance side of things for our student athletes.
Another big part of your job is interfacing and being part of the NCAA. And you have a very high-level role now in the NCAA. You've worked your way up, so to speak, through that organization. And you're on the Division III Management Council.
I am. I've worked as the FAR. I've done the FAR position for 5 years at Behrend. And during that time, I was asked after about 5 years to start getting involved in committee service through the NCAA. And, the first committee responsibility I got about 5 years ago was on interpretations and legislation committee for Division III at the NCAA. And that was a lot of fun. And I think of the accountant's brain and the audit brain, it just worked for me. So after I finished that stint, I was nominated to serve on our Division III Management Council. And again, we report directly to the President's Council of Division III, and we handle all of the implementation of policies adopted by the Board of Governors at the NCAA, as well as Division III President's Council. So there's a lot of things going on with that position. We were able to sponsor legislation. We make interpretations of the bylaws. We handle, any resolutions that go through Division III. It really hits our committee. And another thing that I knew, but I wasn't, I guess, necessarily knew in detail is, in addition to being on the Management Council, we also serve on other subcommittees within NCAA Division III. So I've been also put on the Division III Strategic Planning and Finance Committee, and that's been very challenging at this time with COVID and NCAA, revenues and costs. And I'm also on the subcommittee for legislative relief and the FAR advisory group. And finally, I also serve on the honors committee, which is the national committee that chooses all the award winners for the NCAA convention each year. So it's a very broad, it's a very detailed, but it's an exciting position.
Wow, you truly do a lot, and the more I work with you, the more I see that. But I want to talk about the student experience too. So we're Division III. Behrend has a significant number of athletic programs. How many students do we have at a given time, and what's special or what differentiates this idea of Division III?
For us, Behrend always has between 325 to 350 student athletes on campus. Ranging for all of our 24 sports. And what's unique about Division III is it's always important for folks to recognize that Division III student athletes do not and cannot earn athletic scholarships. And so the students that are here, they're really here because they want two things. They want a great educational opportunity, which we are able to provide. But in addition, they want a great opportunity to continue competing after high school at a very high level. The student athletes at Division III are just as competitive as those that you might see on TV every Saturday playing in Division I football. And so the importance of having this opportunity for these students is tremendous. The other thing what's great about Division III is the Division III philosophy. It's always at the forefront of everything that we're talking about, and it always is looking at the student athlete experience and doing the best that we possibly can to provide high quality educational experience that also includes high quality student athlete experience. And when we can blend the two, which we've done a great job at Behrend, it's a win-win for everybody. And our student athletes are just spectacular here.
It is part of the whole educational experience. We've got a nice, unique mix of athletics and academic programs that students can't find in a whole lot of places. So there's a little bit of my advertisement. But I want to talk, though, about their performance in the classroom as well. You started to monitor their GPA, and our students have a GPA that's typically on average higher than our average student. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, our students, we started about 7-8 years ago, and we decided, let's start tracking team GPAs, our overall GPAs. And back 7-8 years ago, when we first did this analysis, we found that in general, the overall average GPA was about a 2.8, and did some further digging within our teams. And we identified we're really looking for that 3.0 GPA as our kind of a target goal. And we identified that there was only 5 of our teams, probably 7-8 years ago, that had team GPAs of 3.0 or above. And you start educating each team and the student athletes about this is where you are. It'd be great for you to be able to do better. just like competing on the field, they start competing in the classroom. And over the last 8 years, we've been able to increase our overall GPA for all of our student athletes around a 3.1. It's risen as high as 3.2. And again, that always fluctuates. But now we have 17 teams. 17 of our teams are actually earning a 3.0 or above. So I think once you present them with the challenge of saying, this is where you are and this is where we really would love to be, they took the bull by the horns, and they've done a great job in the classroom. And it's a great bunch of students, and it's really a testament to our coaches who are recruiting great students to come here that can handle the rigor of a Penn State Behrend education, but also, again, great competitively on the field as well.
Yeah, it's a great story, and we appreciate you tracking it. And it's, so many of them are all academic, conference team and the like. I won't go through all of them, but I just love the way that we promote that. I want to talk about facilities. We've got great facilities, soccer field, baseball field, of course, the Junker Center, but Erie Hall. Erie Hall's been on campus since 1948. And it's coming down. And how's that going to change the experience for our student athletes?
We do need the space, and again, it goes back to the Division III mantra that our student athletes are treated just like any other student on campus. And so as we continue to grow as a campus, we definitely need these additional facilities to provide opportunities for not just our student athletes, but all of our students. And it's going to be a wonderful entrance way. It's going to be a gateway to the campus where our students are able to come to campus and see the Lilly Library as they enter, and then seeing a refurbished and a brand new Erie Hall. It's going to be great for our student athletes to utilize that space, to be able to compete in that space, but also for our students to just have additional health and wellness opportunities across campus. So it's going to be a win-win for everybody. It's going to be great.
Yeah, we're all excited about it. It's still going to take about 2 more years before we get the whole new building, the current building demolished and the next one in place. Let's switch, though, to the impact of the COVID crisis. How has this impacted our student athletes?
It's impacted them in a number of ways. And I think, directly, they've lost seasons. They've lost eligibility seasons. The NCAA when this all came out, a couple of months ago, all of our winter sport athletes, a lot of them lost their championships, as the closure of the, winter sport championships, which includes basketball and track and field and a number of different sports. And then, the loss of all of our spring sports, softball and baseball, those are all gone. And so kind of helped our student athletes out. They said, look, we're not going to charge you with a season you're able to get that season back if you want to continue. They provided an additional semester of eligibility for Division III student athletes. But the challenge has really been, if you're a senior student athlete, what do I do? I'm passionate about my athletics, but I'm also really close to graduation, and it's a challenge for student athletes. I know some of them are, they're all disappointed. They're all disappointed, but I think they're never going to forget, what they've gone through. And again, they're resilient. It's a resilient group, and they're going to come out of this, good on the other end, I'm sure.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, Chuck. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to, I appreciate you having me on, Ralph. I said this has been a lot of fun, and anything that I can do to help our student athletes and continue, making Behrend a special place to come to, I'm happy to do it. So I just want to say thanks for having me on. It's been fun.